Hello everyone. Hi there. How are you doing today? I'm doing excellent. I thought that while we were still somewhat at the beginning of the year, that I would do one last look back at the previous year. I always love those videos where it's like every book I read in the year, whatever, and I realized I could do that. I read a lot of books in 2024, and even though I'm not necessarily proud to have read all of them, I kind of don't care, and I thought it would just be fun content, relaxing for me to ramble on and on and on, and maybe give you some recommendations if you're looking for books to read this year. I recently saw a video done by my friend Kelly, also known as JubileeWhispers. She did one where she ranked them all from least to most favorite, and I have so much fun watching that. So I am gonna go through every book I read. I have my Goodreads up on my phone, and they are gonna be not in order of reading, nor just the order which I read it in the year. So starting last January, I only made my Goodreads partially through the year. I don't remember, May or June. So the beginning of 2024 is kind of squidgy, as I don't know what I was doing. Let me get it up before I babble on too long. And then at the end, I'm gonna talk a little bit about books that I am reading or am gonna be reading in 2025. So a bit of a TBR, including 4 books that I just received as a birthday present that I can't wait to show you guys. So this is not, no, I was looking at another book. Okay, here's my Goodreads. Let me go to my 2024 reads, and I'm not gonna be publicly sharing my Goodreads because it is just a private Goodreads. It's purely for me to try to keep track of all the books that I read. Even though I'm gonna share them all with you right now. Okay, so I do remember that one of the first things I read in 2024 was I finally read Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. I bought that book years ago when I first got into ACOTAR. And it took me 2 years to read. I just kept starting it and stopping it and putting it down. And I know I'm not the only one who did this. I know there are more of you out there that couldn't get into it. It's just a slog in the beginning. It's a total slog. It was just so much world building for just the first 100 pages, and you're exhausted. You're just so tired of it. So I picked that up and put it down maybe 4 times before the third book, the last book in the Crescent City series, was coming out last January, and I was like, well, I have to read the first 2 so I can read this and get it. Hairs. So I finally read it. I gave it 4 stars. The ending was pretty fun and exciting. So then I immediately afterwards read the second book, House of Sky and Breath. Also 4 stars. Honestly, both of these books were very mid to me up until the last quarter or third, and then it was very action-packed, and I had fun by the end, And so my feelings towards the end of the book kind of bumped it up a star rating. So are they true 4s? Maybe not. But if you've read them, you know that they end in like, well, book 2 at least ends in this very big kind of cliffhanger that you're just like, oh, I absolutely cannot wait to see what happens next. This is so exciting. So then book 3 came out and I read that. That one is called House of, oh, it's not even listed in my first page. House of, what is it called? You can tell I really thought really highly of that book. Flame and Shadow. 3 stars. Which is really not bad. 3 stars means like, my star rating is this. 1 star. Nothing gets 1 star because 1 star means I didn't finish it. Which is probably not very good because I don't even list ones that I didn't finish on my 2024 reads. So nothing has 1 star here, but there was 1 or 2 books I didn't finish. I purposely chose not to finish them. 2 is like, that was actively bad and I regret reading it. 3 is, that was okay. I liked parts of it, I didn't like parts of it. If this is like a series, I don't think I would want to continue it. 4 is, this was very fun, but it wasn't a love. And to me, what makes a 5-star read is I usually keep thinking about it after I'm done reading. Like, I couldn't put it down. One more chapter, and then afterwards it sticks with you for a while. That's a 5-star read. So I had a few 5 stars. So, first 2 Crescent Cities got 4 stars. They were fun. I was excited to see where the story went. 3rd book totally fell off. And I pretty much don't want to reread it ever. And any other people out there who've read Mass's works or Crescent City, you probably know why I feel this way, and you probably feel similarly. It's just a bunch of gobbledygook. So that was my big series that I read at the beginning. I'm very confused over the order. I know I read The Serpent and the Wings of Night early in the year as well. And this was a decent read. I heard a lot of, it's very hyped up. It's like a vampire. I should warn you guys that just about everything I read is fantasy or fantasy romance. I got really into fantasy romance this year, and that's the majority. So Serpent and the Wings of Night was really hyped up for like lovers of ACOTAR. It was just a 4-star read for me. Maybe I need to go back and reread it because I still see people list it at the top of their reads of the year, like 5 stars, and it just felt a little flat to me. I read that one, and then I read the sequel right after, and the sequel's called The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. Both 4s. Fun reads. I enjoyed reading them. Didn't stick with me, and because I read them like exactly a year ago, I literally can't tell you anything about the plot. I remember their names, Oriah and Rain. Well, it's spelled R-A-I-H-N. I found out it's supposed to be pronounced Ryan, and I disagree with that. I'm normally the kind of person that, like, I'm very good at name pronunciation. Like, I don't know, my mom made me study a lot of Latin as a kid, so I think I have, like, a lot of good, like, root word pronunciation and all that. And so I'm pretty good at knowing how a name is pronounced and being correct. I know a lot of people struggled with the names in, like, ACOTAR, for example, but, like every friend I had to explain that the name R-H-Y-S is pronounced Reese. It's a pretty normal British name. I knew a guy named Reese. And there's a few actors named Reese. And they all thought it was pronounced rice. Like the grain. And so I see a lot of people refuse to pronounce it the right way because they read it different in their head. And that always annoys me because I'm like, it's a real name. You have to pronounce it right. But this book, Rain, that's the only name where I'm like, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. That's Rain. It's not Ryan. Okay. So read that one. 4 stars. And then I read the Cruel Prince trilogy by Holly Black. And this was my first 5-star series of the year and remains to this day one of my favorite things I've read in the last few years. It sticks with me. I reread the series. I read the series twice last year, and I love it. It is a young adult series, but funny enough, it was so much more grounded and mature than a lot of the adult books I read. The main character is very clever, very believably clever, and not immature at all. The world doesn't feel childish. It feels dark, lush, full of dangers around every corner. And like, you have to be smart to get ahead in this world. It's such a fantastic work that I've recommended it to just about every person I have talked to this year. And everyone I have recommended it to that has read it has really loved it. And it's so beautiful. Love it. Love the Folk of the Air. Sorry, it's called the Folk of the Air trilogy. The Cruel Prince. The second book is called The Wicked King, and the third book is called Queen of Nothing. So that was my first 5-star read. Then I read Bride by Ali Hazelwood, and this also got 5 stars from me. I've never read an Ali Hazelwood book before because she usually writes a lot of contemporary romance, and as you'll probably see by my list, I don't really read contemporary stuff ever. I'm mainly a fantasy and sci-fi person. If it exists grounded in reality, I don't want it. Let me have my escapism fun. But I heard a lot of people recommending Bride. Sorry, my stomach's making all sorts of weird noises. Because Bride is Allie's first fantasy book about werewolves and vampires. So the main character, she's this vampire, and the trope is arranged marriage. So she's arranged to be married to a werewolf. And it was a book where I enjoyed the plot and the relationship with one of the side characters more than I enjoyed the romance of it. It's just very fun. I thought that the main character was really funny, and she felt like a very clever person, and I like reading from the perspective of clever girls, which is also why I love The Cruel Prince. Really fun read. I would reread it if I didn't have so many other things to read. So I was like pleasantly surprised with that. And then I read Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing. Oh my god. Everyone's heard of Fourth Wing. What did I give Fourth Wing actually? For some reason they're all out of order on here, at least in the first couple pages. I gave Fourth Wing 5 stars. That actually kind of surprises me. I think at the time I really had fun with it. It was enjoyable. It feels like Harry Potter for slightly more grown-up people who like dragons and wish that they had focused on dragons more. And there was no magic, just dragons. Well, I mean, there's magic, but not like the spells and the wands and all that. That's very much what it feels like. It feels like a cross between young adult and adult, because even though it is adult, the characters are pretty immature. And it's in a school, college format. So I enjoyed it. It was fun. But by my method of, if a book sticks with me, it's 5 stars, Forfang didn't stick with me. I just remember enjoying it while I read it. So I might have to drop that down to a 4. I then read Iron Flame, and that one I gave a solid 4, which may even be a 3. I didn't dislike it as much as I disliked the third Crescent City book, but I enjoyed the first half of Iron Flame, and the second half felt like a completely different book that I struggled to finish. I was so bored. Didn't care for it. And we are days away from the third book coming out, Onyx Storm, which will be the end of the trilogy. I pre-ordered it. My copy is coming. I'm gonna read it. But I know my friends are all rereading Forfang and Iron Flame before they read that, and I just don't have that in me. I'm not rereading those. I'm not doing it, guys. They're just also huge books. They're 800 pages. So was Crescent City. Each book was 800 pages. So that one was a blah. I then read my first book club book of the year. So I joined a fantasy romance book club, and we read our first book in February or March, and that was The Court of Blood and Bindings by Lisette Marshall, which is the Fae Isle series #1. And I thought it was pretty good. It felt very ACOTAR coded. Shadow, daddy powers, guy, naive girl been taken from her crappy human village. There were so many parallels to ACOTAR that I was rolling my eyes a lot, but there were unique aspects that I enjoyed. The main male character he can't speak due to magic reasons, and so I found their communication interesting, and the magic system was pretty cool. It's this color-based magic, so it was red magic or red colors to do damage, and blue was healing or something. So what they would do is they would wear colors, and they would leech the color from their hair even, and use that. So I thought that was very, very unique. It says I gave it a 3. I remember liking it a bit more, but I think how similar to ACOTAR it felt made it drop down. We then read the sequel for our next month, and that's Lord of Gold and Glory, and this was my first 2-star read of the year. I hated that book. Hate's a strong word. I really didn't like that book. It was one of the most boring books I've ever read, and I could not understand all the 4 and 5-star reviews on Goodreads. It was so much more boring than the first one. Without spoiling it, it felt like the entire book, pretty much the entire book, takes place in a cave. Which, I've read a few books like this, and I didn't like any of them. I think also of a Shadow and Bone book I read a couple years ago. One of the Shadow and Bone books, the third one, I think the third one, is set underground for a lot of it. And I found that very boring. There was nothing to do. The plot wasn't really being driven forward. We felt stuck, and I felt like I was living in the underground cave, So the whole second book was like this, and I was super, super bored. And we just weren't leaving the freaking cave. I'm like, when are we gonna leave this freaking cave? We didn't leave the cave. 2 stars, and every other girl in my book club hated this book. We all hated it. We all gave it 1 or 2 stars, and then we decided to abandon the series after that. So none of us have read anymore. If you've read past the second book in the Fae Isle series, I would really like to know what you think. And also, do you think I'm being too harsh on the second book? I totally may be. I may be being way too harsh on it. Okay. The next book I read, I may have read others in between, but like I said, these first few pages are in a weird order. Like, it lists this book club book before those two, and I know those were my first ones. I read A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. She's the author of the Bridge Kingdom series. I really enjoyed the premise of this book. It's a Viking fantasy. It's a very Norse mythology, Norse gods. I really like Norse lore and mythology as a whole. I gave it 4 stars, which is being generous because I didn't love it. It wasn't that it was bad, but I kept having to make myself read it, which is the mark of a not as fun book for me. If I keep having to go, okay, well today I need to read 100 pages, rather than wanting to read 100 pages. Or, oops, I just read 100 pages, oops. Cool magic system. Main character was pretty fun. Didn't care whatsoever about the romance. Didn't like the main male character. He was boring. He was described to look like every other main male character out there. If you read a lot of fantasy romance, or actually even if you don't, there's a trope for how all the love interests look these days, and it's like tan, dark hair, broody, maybe he has wings, he has tattoos for sure, and he's got like some sort of dark shadow ability. These are the shadow daddies. So they all kind of look like that, small variations, but they all are described to look the exact same, and I'm sick of it. I like unique characters. I don't like them all feeling the same. So I'm really, really over this style of guy. So the next book I read gets 5 stars from me because it was totally unlike anything else I'd read this year. And that's Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. Absolute perfect 5-star read for me. I adored every minute of it. I would definitely reread it. But the main female and main character are perfect. The main female character is 30. I enjoy reading an older, I say older, that's really not old, but so many of them are like 18, 19, 20, and you're like, okay. When I was that age I was stupid, but no, so I just enjoy reading a more mature, grounded female character. So she's a professor, she's 30, she's just a little bit more relatable. And the main male character is blonde. He's not a dark-haired shadow daddy. He's amazing. He's like the top of my book boyfriends list. Well, him and one other guy I'll tell you about. Love Wendell. So, that was 5 stars. And it took me quite a long time to read the sequel because I was sad for the series to end. The 3rd book is not out yet, but it is coming out soon. But I eventually got around to reading it, and it was also 5 stars. It was a perfect sequel, in my opinion. It captured everything I loved about the first book and gave me exactly that and more, with nice character progression of the characters I've come to know and love, callbacks to the first book, and new characters that didn't drag. I think I love this author. So yeah, this author, Heather Fawcett, she's an insta-buy author for me now. Okay, next it says, again, these are in such a weird order. There's a novella that comes after the Folk of the Air series. It's listed as 3.5. It's not really a necessary read, but it's called How the King of Elfame Learned to Hate Stories, and I read that one somewhat recently, a couple months ago, but for some reason it's listed really early on in the year. It was very cute. I give it 5 stars purely for the Cruel Prince. Was it actually a 5-star read? Like, I'm gripping my seat. It was really short, less than 200 pages, and half the pages were illustrations. I really enjoyed the book because it had gorgeous illustrations, because it was characters that I've come to know and love, a little bit of backstory into those characters, new fluff. So it gets 5 stars because I would do anything for them. It's good. Okay, going on to my next page. A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. This was my second 2 stars of the year. I had heard a lot of fun stuff about this, and I love a Greek myth retelling. I love Greek mythology. Huge Percy Jackson kid over here, okay? I didn't want to go to Hogwarts. I wanted to go to Camp Half-Blood. Perkabeth forever, okay? And you know me, I'm a Hades stan. Hades 1, Hades 2, some of my favorite games. Like, I love Greek stuff. So, Hades and Persephone. Hades Town musical I love. Okay, I'm done now. So yeah, a Hades and Persephone retelling. Yeah. No. I hated this one. My apologies if I trash any of the books you love. We can still be friends, I promise. I felt the writing in this was amateur hour. It was very, very, yeah, it was amateur-y. It wasn't the highest quality. The characters were kind of insufferable. Didn't really care for Hades, didn't really care for Persephone. Felt it was boring. Felt that the spicy scenes were boring. And I was skipping through them. So I gave that one 2 stars because I at the very least finished it. It's the first of a whole series. There's like 4 of these books. And then all the books are told also from Hades' POV. And I've heard they're more fun, but I disliked this so much, I'm not giving the rest of the books a try. So I stopped there. I will not be reading any more from Scarlett St. Clair, I think. Whether they're the Game of Fate Hades ones or in the Persephone POV ones, I'm not doing it. And then it ended up on our book club list. So it was just last month. It was last month's book club book in December. We had to read it. I had to reread it. I didn't even want to read it the first time. I forced myself. I was skimming hard at the end. But I managed to finish it at my friend's house. I arrived early for book club and I'm sitting there going, flipping through my Kindle madly. No one else liked it. Well, one girl liked it. But she's read all of them. So that might have influenced her rating. So yeah, unfortunately, I read that one twice this year. And I didn't even want to read it once. Next, I read the Villains and Virtues trilogy by A.K. Caggiano. And you may have heard me talk about this one before because it was a 5-star series for me. I reread this. I read it multiple times. So the first book is called Thrown in the Dark. The second book is called Summoned to the Wilds. And the third book is called Eclipse of the Crown. And I would recommend them to anybody. My stomach, sorry. They are fun fantasy romance. Feels very RPG-esque, like you've been thrown into a game of Dungeons and Dragons and you are following the main characters go on these quests. It's got a really cute, quirky sense of humor that you might find a little silly at first, but if you can get used to that, you'll enjoy the rest. But the really great thing here is the way the relationship blossomed between the two main characters. It's a full-on grumpy sunshine trope. He is this super grumpy blood mage who swears up and down that he's evil, and she is this sweet, happy-go-lucky human girl that is accidentally thrown into his life, and they, for better or worse, are stuck together adventuring for a little bit, and it is a perfect series to me. So I read it twice. The first book I read like 3 times because I made my friends read it and I was rereading it with them. And so far everyone I've told to read it has also absolutely loved it and given it 5 stars. So if you take any books away from this video, Cruel Prince trilogy, the Folk of the Air trilogy, and the Villains and Virtues trilogy are the 2 series I'd like you to read. One's young adult and the other one is adult. So Villains and Virtues does have spicy scenes in it, but it's very, very slow burn, and it's only at the end, like is in the 3rd book, okay? Next I read Peaches and Honey and the sequel Pits and Poison. I gave them both 4 stars. I loved the premise of this. The premise is someone who's gifted immortality as she travels through time, meeting this reoccurring fate, death sort of character. I don't remember what he is. But they're both immortal. I'll talk about it later, but I think The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue did this better. And I also think Good Omens did this better, if you could really consider Good Omens in the same sort of vein. But in the vein of something where, like, we pop in and out through different time periods. I felt like we would get stuck in a time period and we would move 50 years over like 20 chapters, and all of a sudden, boom, we jump 400 years, and I'm like, what? There was good history in those 400 years, why did we skip that? So there were weird historical choices made. I felt like it dragged a bit, but then worst of all, I really didn't feel anything in this like romance. I didn't feel any real chemistry. And then the second book focused less on moving through time and history and more on these sort of godly beings, and that just fell flat for me. I was really disappointed because I really wanted to love this series. I've heard such high praise for them, but they were both hovering between a 3 and a 4 for me, so I gave them 4s to be nice. My book club is debating reading Peaches and Honey for 2025, and I let them know what I thought. I'll reread it if they choose it. I didn't like veto it. I just didn't vote for it. Next I read Quicksilver by Kelly Hart. This was another pretty viral one, I feel like. Talked about a lot. It's the Fae and Alchemy series. I gave this one 5 stars actually. It was way more fun than I thought it would be. I was expecting another 4th Wing kind of overhyped, just another Fae sort of book, but it was pretty fun. I liked the alchemy aspect of it, and I liked the main male character. I thought he was fun. It was pretty decent book. I would reread it. Next I read Atonement of the Spine Cleaver by F.E. Price. This one was really long. How long was this? Definitely 500 pages. Oh, almost 800 pages. So yeah, over 500. I gave this a 4. Aspects of it I enjoyed, and other aspects were just slightly boring. I enjoyed the premise of the main character. She's way older than your typical, again, like 20-year-old. Like, she's also long-lifed. So I want to say she was like 50 or 60, but she's doesn't appear older than like 20s, 30s, you know, because she's like immortal or just lives a long life. I don't remember. Nice supporting cast of characters, but the POV jumps were a little too. I didn't love them. Yeah, I didn't always enjoy. It has to be done really well. A book that changes POVs has to be done really well for me to like it. This one just wasn't as good, but still a decent read. The next series I read was the Harrow Fair series. Okay, so hear me out. You guys are gonna laugh. This is about the time I was getting really into Baldur's Gate, and I legitimately Googled or searched among, you know, people who read a lot of fantasy romance, any books with a main male character like Astarion. Because again, I'm sick of the fae tattooed shadow daddy types. I want a bitchy vampire, okay? So a lot of people recommended this Harrow Fair series, which the premise is like a magical sort of fair, kind of stuck in time. Girl who gets kind of sucked into the fair. And I read it just as a lark, thinking it would be nothing special. The first book's incredibly short, like 250 pages, so I flew through that in an afternoon, and it was intriguing enough for me to keep going. I think I gave the first one 3 stars. It was like, the thing that I found annoying about it was the main character just kept saying the same thing over and over. It felt like 250 pages of the same thing. I could summarize the first book for you as this girl has a boring life and she has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is the same thing Violet has in Fourth Wing, so I feel like I've already read this. So yeah, she has a lot of chronic pain. She has ligaments that kind of fall apart. Her joints are all popping out. So, I know people like with chronic pain were reviewing like, okay, we get it, enough. But again, I kept reading. Second book was better. I gave it 4 stars. There are 5 of these, and they're all relatively short. Nothing was over 400 pages. And then in the third book, I started to really enjoy it, and I gave books 3, 4, and 5 all 5 stars. So I was actually very pleasantly surprised by this. Was the main male character Astarion coded? Yeah, he was. And this was one of the first kind of dark romances I've ever read, but it wasn't super dark. So I thought maybe I liked dark romance, but then I read another book that was dark romance this year, and I hated it. That's, I think, maybe the only book I did not finish. I actively quit it at about the 60% mark because I was so disgusted. So then I realized I don't really like dark romance. I just really liked this one series. Because I have a definite limit of what I can handle. Like, yeah, I don't know, without spoiling too much. He never crossed the line with her. So, that was a really fun series about like a magic fair carnival. If you're into that whole carnival kind of aesthetic, you'd like it. A kind of evil, kind of psychopathic main male character who kind of has a heart of gold in a way. Yeah. So that was actually really fun, and I actually want to reread it. It was on Kindle Unlimited too, so. Then I read 2 novellas by A.K. Caggiano in the Villains and Virtues universe, Bound to Fall and Bound and Tide, and they were both okay. They were not as good as Villains and Virtues. I gave Bound to Fall 4 stars and Bound and Tide 5 stars, but it's probably more 3 and 4 stars, to be perfectly honest. I have a tendency to go up rather than down. They were alright. I think the thing I loved most about Villains and Virtues was how slow burn it was and how earned the romance felt. And because these were short novellas, everything was just very rushed, which is okay. But there just wasn't for me. Next is a book club book, One Dark Window. This one got a lot of hype and praise, and I actually very much enjoyed it. I then read Two Twisted Crowns after, because it wasn't on our book club, but I wanted to know what happened, and it's only 2 books, so I gave them both 5 stars, although I definitely liked the second book more. So, is it a 4 and 5 star? Probably. The funny thing is I didn't like the main characters, the main female and main male character. Didn't really like them, didn't care for them. But there's another set of characters you're introduced to, and they're more the focal point in the second book, and I liked them way more. So that was very fun. Then I read Assistant to the Villain, which has been getting a lot of talk this year. I think it's like being made into a TV show. So Assistant to the Villain to me is a knockoff of Villains and Virtues. It is a very similar premise, but not as well executed. And I made a mistake in reading this after Villains and Virtues, because it didn't hold a candle to it. I gave it 4 stars, which is accurate. It was fun, but it didn't feel special after Villains and Virtues. So if you liked Assistant to the Villain, please read Villains and Virtues, because I think it's better. So then I read another series by Catherine Ann Kingsley. Catherine Ann Kingsley wrote the Harrow Fair, the Carnival series I just told you about, and I had so much fun with it. I was like, maybe I like her other stuff. So I read the Unseelie Prince Maze of Shadow series. I didn't like it. There's 4 of these books, and I read all 4, and I didn't like any of them. You may ask, why did you keep reading them? Well, I kept hoping it would get good. I gave every single one 3 stars, which I think sums it up. Didn't hate it, didn't love it. It was there. The main male character in that kind of crossed the line into like evil guy character that I don't like. He's too bad. Yeah, all 4 of those. Then I read Belladonna for my book club. I gave Belladonna 5 stars. I don't know that that's accurate. I think it's more of a 4 star. I liked it, but mainly I liked the abilities and the powers and the magic in it. I did not like the relationship between the 2 main characters because I found it really creepy. It's not really a spoiler to say because it's literally the first chapter that the main male character, who is death personified, meets the main female character when she is literally a baby. And that, I was like, ooh, don't like that. And I really couldn't get past that, to be honest. So it was fun, and it was a very thematic read. It felt very autumnal and spooky, and I liked that. I also read Foxglove, the sequel. Foxglove I also liked, but I felt like it started to drag at the end. I gave it 4 stars. I think they're probably both 4 stars. I have not read the last one yet, Wisteria, but a friend of mine in the book club who read Foxglove as well, were the only ones who continued the series. She read Wisteria and said she liked it and thought it was better than Foxglove. So I've got to do that. Then I read 2 fanfics this year, and they are both Hermione fanfics. haven't read anything related to Harry Potter since I was a kid. As I started to grow up, really just started not caring about Harry Potter, very much growing out of it. And I don't know, I'm not one of those, I'm not a Harry Potter millennial, okay? I have some friends who are, and Harry Potter's like their whole life and their personality, and they have the houses and the scarves and all that. I very much enjoyed it as a kid. I went to the midnight book parties, midnight film releases, but after the last one came out when I was in high school, I guess, I just really didn't care anymore. And then J.K. Rowling outed herself to be a horrible person, and after that I really just wanted nothing to do with Harry Potter. But a friend of mine recommended a couple of she recommended a Hermione fanfic that I've heard a lot about, so I gave it a try. It is the famous Manacled series by Senlin Yu. Now, actually, this is probably inappropriate timing because it's so popular that the author took it down off AO3 and is publishing it into a real book. So for those of you who don't know, that's actually pretty common. Some fanfics become so popular that authors publish them. However, you can't publish works using someone else's IP. You know, like J.K. Rowling would absolutely step in and shut that down. So what they have to do is scrub any mention of the source IP in these books, and they get turned into totally different works. A very famous one you've probably heard of is 50 Shades of Grey. That is Twilight fanfic, and Twilight itself was pretty much Harry Potter fanfic, I think. But 50 Shades of Grey, that's Bella and Edward. And because Edward is really, really rich, so it got all the Twilight, the vampire stuff scrubbed from it. He's not a vampire anymore, he's just a billionaire. I don't know, I haven't actually read 50 Shades of Grey, nor did I read it when it was fanfic, but that is an example of how fanfic gets turned into a novel with no relation to the original source material. So Manacled is getting the 50 Shades of Grey treatment, and the last day it was available to be downloaded was the last day of 2024. So if you didn't read it, I'm sorry, I don't know how to find it now because it's no longer on Archive of Our Own. Now, okay, there's a lot to say that I gave this 5 stars. It is a 5-star read that sticks with you, but it is freaking heavy. It's heavy. It is Harry Potter meets Handmaid's Tale. If you're familiar with Handmaid's Tale, that is also a dark, heavy work. The blurb, which is not a spoiler, this is like the premise, the blurb on the back, is Harry Potter is dead. The whole resistance or whatever failed. Hermione is one of the few left. I won't say anything else without spoiling it. It's really graphic and it's pretty dark, but it is a very good book and it will make you feel a lot of things. This one fanfic is honestly 3 different books. Each one was about 500, 400 pages. The whole work of Manacled was over 1,000 pages. What does it say? It's 1,500 pages, okay, or 1,458. So it's really like 3 books in one, and this was the longest book I read this year because it looked like it was a 1,400 page book, but it's really chopped up into 3. So if you count Manacled as one book, then, you know, I read 57, but I read more if you count it. It's really good. But I needed something like light and fluffy afterwards, so I read another Hermione So now I'm on the Hermione train, which I've never been on before. It's a pretty fun train. Another one I saw recommended a lot is called Draco Malfoy and the Mortifying Ordeal of Being in Love. And this was very much a good read to read after Manacled, because it brought me down from the sadness of Manacled. This one is way more light and fluffy and happy, and gave me very similar villains and virtues vibes paired together. Adventures, comedy. I did laugh quite a few times during this. So those are the two I read, both 5 stars, very different vibes. If you want a happy vibe, read that one. To Matt Mobile, if you want to feel a lot of emotions, read Manacled. Again, I don't know how you'd read Manacled. I think Draco Malfoy and the Mortifying Ordeal of Being in Love has also been taken down. Maybe not. But that author has gotten a book deal. So she's writing a non-Harry Potter related book, as opposed to where Manacled's getting scrubbed of Harry Potter. She's just writing a whole new book, and it's called, one second. It's like the top of my 2025 TBR. What's it called? The author is Bridget Knightley, and the book is called The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy. And apparently it's going to be very similar, similar kind of vibes, but a totally different book. I can't wait to read it. It doesn't come out till like summer. I have to wait forever. Next, I read another book club book, An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson. This is a Carmilla retelling, which I was so hyped for. The Carmilla tale, if you don't know, is a classic vampire tale of a vampire named Carmilla. And this was just okay. It really fell flat. And I found Carmilla, the character, way more interesting than the female main character, whose POV we read from. Yeah. Also, their relationship went from like, it was kind of an enemies to lovers kind of deal, but it was like enemies, wait, I love you with all my heart. And we all kind of rolled our eyes at that. But also, because it's a vampire book, we thought there would be way more vampire stuff happening, and it was incredibly vampire light, so that was disappointing. But it was a pretty good mood read. I think the author's really good, so I'd like to read more by her. This one just fell a little flat. I then read The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo, and I gave that one 4 stars. I thought it was really decent. Not enough to be an amazing, changed my life 5-star book, but it was fun. And Leigh Bardugo is such a good writer, so I'll read anything she writes. I read Bull Moon Rising by Ruby Dixon. This was my first ever Ruby Dixon book, and I see why people like her. She's a very fun author. Her books are very easy to read, very, very simple but engaging. And I was intrigued by the fact that it was a Minotaur romance, but I ended up not really caring about that. And I cared a lot more about this little circle of found family that she creates, and I really liked that part of the book. I also really enjoyed this world. It was very archaeological and like historical based, where they're searching for like magical artifacts. I thought that was a really cool premise. I think there's going to be more, so I'm interested in seeing what else happens, because it says in book number 1. Gave it 5 stars. The Phoenix Keeper was another book club book that no one liked in my book club but me. It's a very cozy fantasy book about a young girl who works at a magical zoo. And maybe I just love animals and the idea of magical animals way too much, because I enjoyed it. Is it slow? Yeah. Is it a little tedious? Yeah. It definitely describes every aspect of what it's like working in a magical zoo, but I enjoyed that. The difficult thing is that the main character has extreme anxiety, and reading her point of view often gives you anxiety over how bad it is. So that aspect wasn't as fun, but I loved the magical zoo concept. And again, no one else liked it but me. I sat in our book club and they all ranted about how much they hated it. And then I was like, I liked it. Yeah. I read Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli. Ciccarelli? This one I got is my first special edition that I got in from an owl crate last year, and I was really pleased. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. It is a YA book, but I felt it had some really good twists and turns. It managed to surprise me a couple times in like a good way. Really fun read, and I'd like to read more in this series. Then I read Under the Oak Tree, the web novel, well, in the published format, Volume 1 by Suchi Kim. Gave this one 4 stars. I wanted to like it a lot more. Yeah, this is a web novel being traditionally published, and the whole thing's done, but this was just Volume 1, and it was a bit of a struggle to read. I can very much see what's happening. I can see that this is going to be a personal growth story where both main characters grow separately and together throughout the course of this long web novel, and I'm sure it will feel very satisfying at the end when they, have overcome their past flaws and embrace their own power. I'm sure it feels great by the end, but the first novel was just okay. You know what I mean? Like, it definitely felt like the first book in a series where someone tells you, no, you have to keep going for it to get good. Like Throne of Glass. Those first 2 books, I think, are not good, but I admit it gets better. So, then I read Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. You guys saw me reading that, I think. It was cute. I gave it 4 stars. This is the only other contemporary thing I read. And I guess maybe one of the only non-fantasy things I read. Yeah, clearly I just don't really love contemporary stuff that much. It was fun, but it was nothing really groundbreaking, and I don't regret reading it, but I probably won't read it again. And I don't know if I would read the others in this series. Then I read another A.K. Caggiano book, really author of the year for me, The 11 Days of Christmas. And you guys already know I love this one because I ranted about it in multiple videos. 5 stars. It's similar to Villains and Virtues, where it has that same fun, silly vibe with a kind of a grumpy. They're both a bit grumpy though. It's not really grumpy sunshine. They're both a bit grumpy. It's fake dating, trope, forced proximity. It's just a standalone though, but it's satisfying. And if you read it at Christmas, it's the ultimate Christmas read. It's like a warm cup of hot chocolate, snuggled up by the fire, and it's snowing outside. It's like, that's how it feels. And then read more Catherine Ann Kingsley. Went back to her because there's a book that is counted as like a sequel to Harrow Fair called The Astonishing Strand Brothers. However, it's like a crossover between her Harrow Fair series and another series she wrote called The Impossible Julian Strand. So I felt like I had to read The Impossible Julian Strand before I could read this. So I did. It's like a ghost romance. It was okay. I gave them both 4 stars. There's just 2, so it was a pretty quick read. It was alright. And then I read the little novella and it was so freaking short. It was like less than 100 pages. It's like, what is even the point of this? So that got 4 stars for me because I felt like that was it. I just read 2 books to read this book, and I don't feel very satisfied after any of it. So then my book club friend recommended this reverse harem or why choose series called The Bonds That Tie, and this was the last series I read last year. I read Broken Bonds, Savage Bonds, and Blood Bonds. That's books 1, 2, and 3 of The Bonds That Tie. I gave them all 4 stars. They were all solidly very fun. It's really the first Why Choose series I've read. And I can see why people like it. It's super fun. However, I can also see the complaint everyone has, which is that it gets really repetitive. The first book is unique and it's fun. The second book, okay, it's still fun. A bit more of the same. And the third book, you're like, nothing new is happening. It's just the same thing over and over and over. And my friend who read it has only read the first 3 books. She's like, oh, I didn't know there were 6 of them. I'm like, yeah, there's 6 books. And I honestly would have stopped after the 3rd book, but it ended in a cliffhanger. So we started the 4th one, and I read like 2 chapters, and I'm already kind of bored. So I haven't officially DNF'd that, but I kind of just shelved it for now. And that was it for the year. I've read 1 book so far this year, start to finish, and that is another Ruby Dixon. I read her classic, Ice Planet Barbarians, which was pretty fun. It's just like a big blue alien guy. But I gave it 4 stars. It was fun. I usually don't read loads of sci-fi anymore, so it was kind of fun to read something a little more sci-fi than fantasy. I can see why people like Ruby Dixon though, like her books are fun. I'm also reading right now, and I brought it with me. I have a nightly book that I, read. So the last one was How the King of Elfheim Learned to Hate Stories, and so when I finished that a few weeks ago, a few weeks of this, how slowly I'm reading it. It's been a couple weeks, I feel like. I started reading The Teller of Small Fortunes by JubileeWhispers. I love this so far. This bookmark is loud, sorry. This is very cozy. If you like Legends and Lattes, or bookshops and bone dust, which I haven't read, but I assume it's the same vibe. It's very much like that. Although I'm only 3 chapters in. It's fantasy. It's cozy. There's, I think, gonna be a cat, because, well, let me show you underneath. So, this one made the rounds in the book boxes recently, I feel like. I saw a lot of people, I'm not subscribed to any of those fancy book boxes because they're expensive, and because they're usually all full. You have to get on a wait list. So I'm not gonna do that because I don't need another excuse to spend money. But I noticed that everyone was talking about getting this one, like a couple of them did it at the same time. And I was ordering some books from Waterstones, and I had seen that this one was coming out. So while I was placing an order, I was like, let me get this from Waterstones too, because it's so cute. The US cover is cute too, but I liked the UK copy a lot more. So, Americans, this is not what our copy looks like, but Brits, if you want to read this, you can get it from Waterstones. And let me show you why I wanted it. First of all, so cute inside. So cute. But underneath the dust jacket, my Chinese is so bad, but this is xiao. Xiao means little. Small, as in small fortunes. So showed it to my dad and he went, oh, sure. That's the extent of how much Chinese we can read. So when I'm done reading this, when I put it back on my shelf, I'm gonna put it with the dust cover off. Because how freaking cute. So this is my slow read that we just read a couple pages of every night before bed. The reason it's so little is I read until my partner falls asleep, and at some point I might go ahead and read ahead, but I haven't read ahead yet. Then my bestie gave me some books for my birthday. My birthday's still a couple weeks away, but she said open them because she was worried I was gonna buy them. I was not going to buy any of them. The first is this copy of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Now, I've read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue a few years ago, but I liked it so much and I didn't have a physical copy, so she got one for me, so that's sweet. And it's a special Barnes & Noble edition with this really cool cover, which I had not seen the cover before. And look at this. Oh, it's also got like cool beginning and end kind of deals. But if we flip a page, it is signed by V.E. Schwab. That is so exciting. This was a 5-star read. It really stuck with me for a while. I thought about it, and I thought about the ending to this book for ages. If you don't know, quick premise is a girl who makes a deal with the devil, sort of, to escape a bad situation. She then lives forever. So, like I was talking about Peaches and Honey earlier, saying that, it's like historical going through time, but I didn't feel it was really well done. This is, even though it's not like a history book, that's not really the point of the book, is to go through history. The point is more how she experiences history. It's really good. To me, I think some people might find it boring. So my friend has not read it, but she got herself a copy and we're gonna tandem read while I reread. I'm worried she's not gonna like it. She likes action and dragons and vampires and X-Men. And this is not really any of those things. So we'll see if she likes it or not. But she gave me a few other books that I just have to show you guys because they are going on the top of my TBR that I'll be reading this year. To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods by Molly X. Chung. I have had my eye on a few Molly Chung's books for a while now, and so funny, we were in Barnes & Noble a couple days ago and I was pointing them out, and I think that's what made her nervous because I pointed this book out specifically, and when she dropped me off she was like, go open your birthday present. So I was like, okay. And I saw she'd gotten me this copy, so I think she was nervous I was gonna go buy it. Like, the dust cover's not on it right now because underneath the dust cover is one of the most stunning books I've ever seen, and I've been displaying it like this. Look at that, it's so beautiful. I love a good hardcover design. And there are edges, pretty edges. I know some people are really split on if they like designed edges or not. I do like them, but they're not the end all be all for me. So this is To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods. She also got me Jade and Dragons by Amber Chen. I think I've heard of this one. I can't remember. The seas can never trap those who are meant to fly. So this is the one I know least about, I think. It's got very blue edges. And oh, this one is actually signed as well by Amber Chen. This is an Owl Crate book. The Owl Crate books usually have a signed sort of letter in the beginning. And I'm really interested by this like schematic here. I'm very interested in that. What's going on? I love a blueprint. There is artwork and a dust cover, and I think the book is printed upside down because I noticed this. So artwork, but then I noticed the book is upside down. It doesn't really affect the book. I think some people would probably be really annoyed by that. I thought it was intentional at first, but I don't think it's intentional. And on the back it's also upside down, but then this is right way up. It's very pretty though. So, dragon book, yes, maybe. And then the last book is also, I think, from Owl Crate. She's not subscribed to them, but she like scours the internet for like good special editions. So I'm very lucky. And I had actually seen this one, and I was very interested in reading this one. The Last Blood Carver. Look at these edges. Very pretty. It's got a heart. Like an anatomically correct heart. And inside heart sooth. Whoa, what's going on there? And also, hello. Look at these gorgeous people. What are they doing? Why are they so hot? I can't wait to find out more. Yes, tell me more. What's happening here? This one looks really good. And then there's artwork inside. Love the academic vibes going on in here. Yeah. So they are adorning my shelves right now, and they're definitely like top of my TBR. I've got quite a few things on my TBR, but mainly these. Also, I'm gonna be reading Spark the Everflame. That's my next book club book for January. That's it. I don't really have much planned to read. So yeah, probably work my way through some of these, do my Visible Life of Addie LaRue reread. Yeah, this has been a very, very long bookish video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you like my content, please give me a like and or comment. Help the algo. And if you're not subscribed already, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe. And join me this year for more fun ASMR content. I am looking forward to another year of good videos. Specifically, if you want to hear more book stuff, let me know, as I could talk about books a lot, but I don't wanna annoy you guys if you're tired of it. But thank you all for watching. If you want me to do a reading soon, let me know what book I should read in the comments. And I'll do another reading video for you all. Sleep tight tonight, everyone. Don't let the bed bugs bite. And I will talk to you all in my next video. Okay. Night night, everybody.